Hey guys, and welcome to another Sasquatch Theory podcast. On this episode, we have Bradley from Missouri, and he had a very close-up encounter with a Sasquatch in the state of Illinois, and some other encounters from the Ozarks. Bigfoot is a very mysterious topic, and I think it's captivated the minds of many people. People are wondering what these creatures are and what they are capable of. What are your thoughts about the subject, and why do you think we aren't being told about the Sasquatch? I have heard many reports where people think there is a Bigfoot in their barn or in an old building. Do you think these creatures will take shelter sometimes to get out of the elements? This encounter gives us more insight regarding the situation, and I do believe these creatures will get into old buildings when people are not around. Alright, let's dive straight into Bradley's Bigfoot encounters from the state of Illinois and Missouri, and if you have a Bigfoot encounter you would like to share with me, please get in touch sometime. All right, Brad, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
Doing wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. You reached out not too long ago, and you said you had some experiences and encounters. If you would, tell me a little bit about yourself and these Bigfoot encounters from the very beginning, please.
Okay, well, I'm 57 years old. I live here in down by Fort Leonard Wood in Waynesville. I've had just maybe one or two experiences here. Most of mine have happened. My first one was in my hometown in Illinois, and then subsequent, because of my sighting in Illinois, I just kind of watched stuff, and then went to for work to Ohio and met a friend who had seen one a half mile from his property. So that's when I started going in and started looking and researching and hiking and things like that. Was at that time, and that's only been within the last 5 to 6 years. So before that, everything I ever did was just watch it on TV. I knew what I saw. I couldn't put it together what it was, or I thought it was a Bigfoot, but you know, when you're younger, it's just weird because it shouldn't have happened where it happened at on the sighting, and I had witnesses with me when it happened. So that's a little bit of background about my experiences with the Bigfoot right there. Kind of, well,
Okay.
not the experiences, but just kind of my background on getting to this point.
Yeah. Okay. So, where were you the first time you had a Bigfoot experience, and kind of put me in your shoes and describe everything in full detail, please?
Sure. So I'm about 15 at that time. My brother was 12, and we were with another friend who we both forgot who he was until about a year and a half ago, he reached out on Messenger to me, and it was that "Do you remember?" post. And so then we kind of remembered. Then we remember back. Yeah, that's right. He was the one with us. But we were in I'm from a farming community, Galesburg, Illinois. And here's where it doesn't make sense because it's a farming community. There is not a whole lot of trees and forestry around there at all. Now, where we saw it, there's a strip of it, but not huge forestry at all. It's just we lived out by the airport, and we would go down and shoot our BB guns at these abandoned homes because the airport was taking that property up. They're going to mow those down eventually and make it part of the airport. So we go down there and we shoot out the windows and do stupid stuff that kids do down there with BB guns. And so it's probably 20 degrees. It was late November, and we're just shooting our BB guns, and we hear something. We turn around to our left, and this creature comes running on 2 feet around a corner and stops. I don't know, maybe 20, 30 feet from us, and stands there, plain clear as day, because there's really nothing behind us or behind that thing either. It was there. And the best way I can describe what it looked like, it was super thick, but it wasn't no 9-foot tall creature. It was about 6 foot tall. And it had hair, 3-4 inches, reddish brown hair everywhere. And the best description of it is like when you see sketches and they sketch the drawing, the pencil drawing, and all you see is hair and then 2 eyes. That's pretty much what I remember seeing, and my brother remember seeing, is just, but it's super thick. I mean, I weighed 130 pounds in high school. This thing was 2.5 times the size of me as far as weight goes. And we stood there frozen. It felt like for 10 minutes or so, just frozen. And, just couldn't move, couldn't do nothing. And it was looking at us. We were looking at it. And then it took off running into the abandoned homes. And we were still kind of frozen. We didn't know what the heck just happened? It was like the fight or flight, and we did neither one of those. We froze. And then it popped its head up in the window and looked at us, at which time we tailed it back down home, which was probably a half a mile. We ran the entire way, 20 degrees, freezing our butt off, but you didn't know that because we were just terrified when we went back home. And so it was that point on that I thought there was something out there that didn't make sense in the world. It just didn't make sense. But again, the thing I always go back to, it shouldn't have been there. There shouldn't have been. That's not an area where I would think, where you would run into a Bigfoot, because there's not a whole lot of forestry there. So that's the thing I wrestle with, and have always wrestled with, is why was it there? And then, so then kind of through my life, I just back and forth, interested. I always watched the shows, Finding Bigfoot, Expedition Bigfoot, all those things I would watch whenever I got a chance, because I wanted more information on it. And then I met a friend for work, because I travel for work out of state on a every other week basis. And he's in Ohio, in Athens, Ohio. And if anybody knows anything about Athens, Ohio, or that area, there's a lot of Bigfoot sightings around that area too. So he's telling me a story where about a half mile from his home, he ran into he saw Bigfoot out in the woods, out in the field, a empty field leading up to the woods. So we stopped. I stopped there, and said, okay, let's start going hiking. We're going to start going hiking. So we were going to go hiking, and the first time we went hiking, it's probably again, it's January, February. It's about 10 degrees outside. And we're in the cemetery, and we hear coyotes kind of tipping you off a little bit. Hey, there's coyotes nearby. And about that time, you hear a huge whoop. And then the coyotes really go really nuts, but it sounds like one's being ripped to shreds, just like being just tore to pieces there. So we're kind of a little bit freaked out about that. So we go down to the bottom, back towards his house, and I said, let me just do a wood knock. What the heck? We got nothing to lose. It's freezing cold. I want to get home, but let's just do that. So it's probably about midnight or 1. I did a couple wood knocks, and in the distance, and he told me later, he goes, there's no home for 2.5 miles in that direction. We get a response back. And that was kind of a little shocking that we actually got a response back at that time. And there was just so many weird things around this guy's property. So I go, every time I go to Ohio now, I go Bigfoot with him. The next time we go out there, I'm getting stuff out of my car, and he's hitting me, yelling at me, and I turn around and look, and I go, what? He goes, look up. And when we looked up, there's a huge orange UFO type ball floating around like 90-degree angles around the sun. And that was kind of freaky. We stood there for maybe 2-3 minutes watching this thing until it disappeared, kind of like where you couldn't watch it because it got into the sun kind of view. And so we're still trying to figure that out. And we start walking down to the where we're going to go hiking, and 2 more. I don't know if they're orbs or if they're UFOs or if they're what balls of light, but they're 2 humongous balls of light go streaking across the top of the forest and dive down into the forest. And later on, I was watching a program, and they were talking about a football game in that same area that got stopped for that orange light that was hovering above the field and going back and forth, which I found interesting because when I went and researched it, it was almost the exact same date that we were there. So again, it's just a lot of activity around his area. We've been out there there's some other parks out by him that we go to. I found a 14-inch track in the middle of the woods one time. But really the thing that I always thought Bigfoot was half human, half man, some kind of Neanderthal-like thing, until we had an experience. And there's a park in the city of Athens. There's a park back behind the downtown area. We went back there one night, and we're hiking, and now we're starting to hike back out. We come around this corner, and this bush is shaking violently. And I stopped Kenny, and I say, listen, that could be a bear, that could be a mountain lion. I'm not comfortable yet. We need to wait and see what shakes out of that bush before we do anything, just wait. About that time, it starts raining persimmons on us. Persimmons, literally in about a 10-foot, not even that, probably 6 foot by 4 foot area. Nothing but persimmons are coming down on us. I mean, nonstop. And I turn around and look at my buddy Kenny, and he is white as a ghost. And his mouth is open, gaped open, and he's frozen. I go, what? And he's like, these are all chewed up and eaten. I go, that's impossible. So I reached down and grabbed them, and all the persimmons on the ground were chewed up. Every one of them chewed up. I'm talking 2 inches thick of persimmons in this area are all chewed up, spit out, and fell on us. And I'm at that point, he says, well, I wonder if it's a squirrel. And I got upset because I'm like, a squirrel is not going to be able to chew up that much stuff and spit it out at us. That is raining persimmons. So the next thing we're thinking about is maybe a bear. And we're looking up in the trees, and this is kind of October, so some of the leaves are falling off. So you can see up in the trees pretty good. And there's no bear in the tree. And even at that, I still don't think a bear could do that. That was just unreal. That it's. I don't know if you know who Russ Jones is. You know who Russ Jones is, Dr. Russ Jones?
No,
He's
I
a
don't.
Bigfoot researcher. Well, my buddy's in contact with him all the time and contacted him concerning this incident, and he was shocked by it too, because he goes Bigfoot hunting down in that area a lot. So we sat there. We decided to go sit on a log just to get out of the disgusting spitty stuff coming down on us of the persimmons. As soon as our butt hits the log, it stops. Everything stops and it gets dead quiet. And we're sitting there and like, okay, what's going on? What do we do? And we sat there 5-10 minutes. We decided to go ahead and walk around the corner. So we go walk around the ridge line, and I stop because something catches my attention down below the ridge line. And I don't know why. Something just grabbed my attention, and there's a big black hole down there. That's all I could see. And I just started taking pictures, snapping in there. And when I got home at night, and I know the effects of pareidoia. I understand that, and very well could be pareidoia. I wouldn't argue it. But I show several people this picture I took, and there is a face in that picture, in that dark black spot, that looks like a Bigfoot face. It looks exactly like you would see it on TV. It looks just like it. But again, I understand it could be pareidoia. So you kind of, I didn't know this till we got back home. So that didn't have any impact on anything at all during the rest of our hike back out of there. So we go by the bush, and right in front of the bush is about a 16-inch track, about an inch deep. Right there, one track. We did not see that track because I'm the one that looks for tracks, and he's the one that looks for the trail and what's in front of us and up in the air. There was no track there on the way in, but on the way out, there was a 16-foot track or 16-inch track there. That was concerning right there, and then it made me wonder about the picture I took down in there. We walked down in there. We decided after we saw the track, we were going to walk down towards that black spot because I told him it caught my attention. Didn't see any action there, but we took a shortcut back up to the trail again, and about 100 yards, probably 150 yards from the first track, there's a second track. And it's odd. There's not two tracks. There's just one footprint. And you go another 100, 150 yards, and there's another footprint, roughly the same size. And they're very clear. I got on my old phone, I had to find them, but I got the pictures of the tracks. Everywhere I go, I try to take pictures of what I see. And so when we leave there, that's changed my whole opinion on what I thought Bigfoot was, because I always thought it was a physical creature. I always thought that maybe half man, half ape, Neanderthal, something like that. I'm not so convinced anymore. My first thought is that was a distraction. There might have been a young Bigfoot in there, and we were being distracted to get it out of there. So that was my first thought. There was a distraction going on for the escape route. But raining persimmons, there's nothing in the tree. That's more like a spiritual or a ghostly or a UFO or an alien type thing. That's the only thing I can think of. So my opinion of Bigfoot has changed. I'm not saying I know what it is. I have no idea what I think it is anymore. I am really confused on if it is a physical creature, if it is spiritual, if it is alien. I don't know anymore because of that experience. So go back out there again a month or so later. It's snowing like crazy. We got 12 inches of snow on the ground. While we're hiking, we get about 12 inches of snow. Not when we went in, it was barely snowing. And there's a little park I can't remember the name of the park. Sandusky maybe, or I don't know, something like that. Back by behind Athens, back in there, a different park. And as soon as we step out of the vehicle, I see about a 9-inch track, and it's at least 3 inches in the mud because there's mud and snow, and part of it was in the snow and part of it was in the mud. But it literally sunk in the mud part because I know snow can melt. It literally was 2 or 3 inches deep in there. It had to be something very heavy that stepped into that. And I thought about it. It caught my attention right away about how deep it was, but it was only about 9 inches, so I paid no attention to it, other than the fact that it crossed my mind that, man, that's awfully deep for a kid to step in, if a man has a 9 foot foot, he's not a very big person, so that's really deep. But okay, I'm not going to take a picture of that. That can be easily explained away, maybe, I don't know. So it's still just barely snowing. We go in about a half mile into the forest, and I don't know, something catches my attention down in the forest off to the right. So me and him go hiking down in there, and we get in there probably about 100 yards. And there's a structure in there that is the typical structure you see on TV. All these things crisscross together, which that's one thing, but they were tied together in the center with like a vine. They were tied together literally in a vine. And it just, again, why would somebody do that? Why would somebody, because they would have to take several people because these were big limbs, huge limbs. It would take several people to go in there to hoax something, to tie these things together in a structure 100 yards, 150 yards off the path. And I took pictures of that too. I have that somewhere. But again, it's just like, I don't understand. I don't understand. There's no way this can be hoaxed because of how big the limbs were, how deep in the forest it was, off a beaten path. If you wanted to hoax somebody, you want somebody to see it. I don't think you would go 100 and 150 yards and just hope somebody would walk off down in there and see it. I just don't think that's possible. So as we get into the end, and I've heard people say this before about lights, and that that maybe there's lights and people follow lights, and you hear voice, and then they mimic people, can mimic. Well, it is dead still. It is snowing. It's one of those straight, wet, heavy snows. There's no sound because there's no wind. It's just coming down like that. And I kept telling Kenny all the way in, I hear a girl's voice. She's calling us. I keep hearing a little girl's voice. And so we keep watching and we see this light. And we follow this light, and we don't get any closer to this light. No matter how far we travel, and we had to be in there 3 miles. We don't ever get closer to this light. And he said, I want to stop. I want to stop because I don't want to walk up on somebody's cabin out in the woods and get shot at or anything like that. So we stopped following the light. And we turn around, and on the way back from the light, on the way back, I hear them voices, that girl's voice again. And he hears that voice. And he says, what is that? And I keep telling you, I'm hearing a girl's voice. And it says it's often, which was off in the direction of the structure. That's exactly where that voice was coming from, off in the direction of the structure. And so as we're walking back out and we get up by that structure, we can still hear that voice calling for help or calling to come over there, or something to that effect. And I'm like, I'm not going over there. I'm not going over there. I've watched too much TV. I'm not going over there. We could be getting ourselves in a lot of trouble. So we just kept walking out. And as soon as we get out, where the little girl, I called it a little girl's track because it was only about less than 9 inches and very deep. You can see a partial footprint now in the snow. And it's weird because you don't see the back part. You only see the toes. But the toes were easily spread out 6 inches on that track, the partial track that we saw on the way out to as we we're getting back into the vehicle to take off to leave. So, that's pretty much my experiences in Ohio. I haven't been back up there since to do that, to go up in Ohio. I'm going again in March. But I've had a lot of interactions around the Richland, Montreal area. And I think you're familiar with that because I think you've had them on a couple episodes back in that area around the Gasconade and that.
Yeah.
So Yeah, so I drive. I've got a camper at the lake, so I drive from Waynesville to the lake all the time, all back and forth, almost every weekend in the spring, summer, fall. And I'm going. It was October, and I'm driving through there. And when you cross the Gasconade on 7 in Richland, there's one tree that stands all by itself out in this field, all by itself. One day I'm crossing that bridge and I slam my brakes on. There is a figure, and you can't tell at that distance how big it is. I can just tell you it was half as tall as that tree was standing out there. Massive, massive. It was black, pitch black figure standing there with its hand on the tree. It almost looked like it was staring at me. That's the impression I got. It was staring at me. It had its hand on the tree, and it could have been more than halfway that as tall as that tree. That's how huge this figure was standing down there. And I was frozen watching it, just sitting there in the middle of the highway watching it. And I didn't come to until I got honked at. And when I got honked at, I took, and I wanted to go back, but I was so freaked out about what I just saw, I kept going straight on down and went on down to the lake. And so every time I go to the lake now, I got to look at that tree, and I've never seen anything massive standing next to that tree since then. Never. But that's how I know for a fact that there was something standing there just massive by that tree. And it could have been a bear. Okay, it could have been a bear, but standing on two legs with one arm on the tree and seemed to be staring at me doesn't seem to be a bear action or reaction, but I do give it the possibility it could be a bear. But I'm convinced it's not a bear. And then probably a month, it could have been a month later, doing that same trip. I crossed the bridge. I'm going up a hill and I see this guy, what I thought was a guy, standing next to a truck and on the left hand side in one of the homes. As I get closer, this thing gets down on all fours and runs across the highway. And I thought, what the crap is that? Did that look like a horse or a humongous dog or something? But it would leapt all the way across the road. It leapt 3/4. It seemed like to me 3/4 across the highway when it leapt, hit that 3/4 part, and then jumped down into the trees. And then back behind the trees is pretty much clear on the right. There's pretty much clear back there. So I'm getting up there and I stop the vehicle. I pull over the side of the road this time. I stopped the vehicle and I'm trying to figure out what the heck did I just see? What is that? And there's nothing. There's nothing out there. I can't see a dog. I can't see a horse. Definitely not a human off to the right. But it was very much dog-like looking, but it was humongous. It was half the it was more than half the size of a horse. It was probably 3/4 of a horse size when it leapt down and leapt across. But the thing I kept going back to is I saw a guy standing next to the truck. I saw what I thought was a guy get down in a crotch position and then all of a sudden start leaping across the road on all fours. And that was really a really scary, freaky incident to see that happen. And probably the one of the where we live by the military cemetery here, and behind us is nothing but forest for miles and miles and miles. And if I go out at night, it's usually after midnight. If I'm out at midnight, maybe we're having a little people over, and then we walk them to their cars, or I'm having a couple of beers out on the deck or something. I've heard whoops several times out here, several times out here in the forest area, and it's all coming from the forest area. And so we get back from vacation, probably 6 months ago. We get back from vacation, and it's 2:30 in the morning. It was in July, as a matter of fact, 2 or 2:30 in the morning, and we're getting stuff out of the car, and we hear this huge whoop, like 2 times in a row, just huge, real deep whoops coming from the electrical line up there, that clearing that goes up. And the wife stands up and turns around and looks to me, and she goes, "What the hell was that?" And I said, "I've told you over and over again, I hear this all the time out here." And she goes, "What is it?" I said, that's what we refer to as a Bigfoot call, a Bigfoot whoop. And she's like, "Yeah, okay, that was something." Yeah, well, that's what it was. That's what I'm used to hearing. That's what it is. And so, anyway, that was that. We came inside, and she won't talk about it. My brother won't talk about when we were kids. I'm the only one that will talk about it. And I don't really know why. I mean, I was scared to come on the podcast just because I've got a fear of talking in front of other people, or That's my fear. It wasn't about telling my story. It was just kind of got that internal fear about public speaking, talking in front of people, things like that there. Um, and then I had another incident when we were in Costa Rica, and we were up on the Cloud Mountain. And we were hiking around, and my daughter was up flirting with the what do you call that? The tour guide. And me and my other daughter were just kind of hanging back. And I told her, I said, listen, something is following me. Every time I step, it steps. And I go, it's got to be bipedal because it's boom, boom. It's not boom, 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 boom. It's boom, boom. So I go, listen, I'm going to walk you, listen. And she turns around to me. She says, Dad, somebody's following you. I said, I know. I told you that. About that time, a big boulder doesn't roll down the hill. It flies through the air, hits the middle of the path, and then goes down. And it didn't roll because there was no sound. It was thrown, hits the path, rolls down. She's freaked out. She goes running up to the tour guide, and I'm still sitting there trying to look up in there and see if I can see anything because something had been following me. So I get up there to the tour guide, and I asked him, do they have Bigfoot? Of course, he didn't understand what a Bigfoot was, so I said, well, describe what Bigfoot was. Oh, you mean the Yowie? And I said, yeah. And he's like, well, the locals up here claim to see the Yowie all the time. He goes, I don't believe in any of that stuff. He goes, but they claim to see it up here all the time. So that's pretty much the extent of all the experiences I've had concerning Bigfoot.
Okay. I appreciate you for sharing all that with me, Brad. And going back to your first encounter when you were in Illinois on the farmland, what do you think the creature was up to?
I kind of wonder if it wasn't using the home for a shelter, the abandoned home. That's the only thing I can think of. It might have been where it came from. I can't explain. I can't tell you because yes, there are some trees back in there, but it's not a forest. It's not. It's not a woody area at all. I mean, there's a strip of woods, and it can go back pretty far, but it's a fairly narrow strip of woods. Unless it was foraging, unless it was hunting, unless it was playing, I have no idea. But I believe that maybe it was housing itself in them abandoned homes. That's the only thing I can think of. But there's plenty of corn out there. I mean, there's plenty to eat out there. There's plenty of corn, soybeans, whatever. I mean, they could have been foraging off of some of that stuff back in there.
Yeah, I agree. So this creature ran out and just stands there. Did it run out of the building or where did it run from?
It ran along the forest clearing line. So it came when we saw it about I don't know 20 yards before it stopped. It didn't catch our attention until about 20 yards before it stopped, and it was running alongside of the around kind of like around the corner of one of the homes. But right there around that corner is like a clearing in the wood line. It was along that line when we saw it coming, and it stopped again. I'm guessing 20, 30 yards from us and froze just like we did. I don't think it knew we were there. I think it heard sounds like the little popping from the BB guns, and that's probably what caught its attention to come running over there.
Yeah. And later on, you guys saw it again. I know you mentioned it was looking through the window.
Yeah, so when we're standing there frozen in time, it decides to make the first move, and it runs into the homes. It runs in one of the abandoned homes, and we're still frozen. We don't know what to do. We don't know what we just saw, what just happened, and then we look over at the windows because we knew it went in there, and you see his head pop up in the window and look at us, and then when we moved, he dropped right back down the below the windowsill.
Wow,
And
that's
again,
terrifying.
all you could see were the eyes and then the hair. The hair. That's another thing. There's no human being that's going to be out in that weather, 20 degrees, with nothing on, and nothing on. I mean, that thing didn't have a lick of clothing on it. There was nothing on it. In the thickness and the hair. That's the thing that gets me. It's the hair, 4 inches long. There's no there. I've never seen a human with that much hair over its entire body. I mean, you could barely make out. The only thing I could really make out were the eyes. That's the thing I could see were the eyes. The face was pretty much the eye part of the face was pretty much clear. Everything else had hair everywhere on it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe it was seeking shelter and trying to get out of the elements. And the juvenile Sasquatch that I encountered here in Missouri, he looked similar to what you described. He was fully covered in hair, and all you saw were these big round eyes sticking out of that hair. And it kind of reminded me of like the creature that chases around Pac-Man in the game Pac-Man, you know?
Yes,
Yeah, it kind of gave me that
exactly.
feeling. Not that it looked
Exactly.
like it, but
That's
that
a
it was a good
right.
feeling, or a good,
That's a good description
yeah,
of
a
it. Yeah.
description I meant to say. But did this thing have a conical shaped head or was it round?
So, well, you're saying conical, no, but the head was more. It was definitely more pointed than ours. Not what I would traditionally look as a conical from what we see on TV. And that it was just our head. Okay, I'll just take my head for example. It was at least a half size taller than my head, and I wouldn't say it was like it was starting to get conical. Maybe that's a good description. It wasn't there yet, but it was kind of you could see where that was kind of forming.
So it had a crest at the top.
Yeah, yeah, but it wasn't pronounced. It wasn't super pronounced. Like somebody could. The only reason I could see it in my head. My brother says that he describes it the same way as I do. Um, but I don't know that you would have. I don't know. When you see the bigger Bigfoots, they are definitely pronounced up there. But this was not really total. I mean, it was there. It just wasn't pronounced.
Yeah. It makes you wonder what it was doing in the area because, like you said, there's not that many trees. I wonder if it lives in the cornfields, but where would it hide when they plow the corn or when it dies off?
That's what I can't explain. I can't explain that. Whenever I talk to people about the story, that's the hang up. I can't explain it, why it was there. I have no idea why it was there. And that's another thing that makes me wonder anymore. Is it alien? Is it spiritual? Is it actually a physical being? I'm totally lost on what I think that is anymore.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way as you. And I've gotten some reports in some really strange areas where Bigfoot should not be at. And it really makes you wonder about portals, UFOs, the supernatural. And there's not really an explanation to it. So I tend to lean towards those strange explanations. And it's really hard to explain something with something else that hasn't been explained. But I mean, it's good to theorize, right?
Yeah, but I think you have to be. I think I sent you this, and when I sent you the messenger, I think you almost have to be a free spirit. You have to be open to encounter, to have encounters. It's kind of like ghosts. I think I've got several ghost encounters too. I think you just got to be an open person. You got to be open to what the world has to offer. You got to be open to the spirituality of things. Um, I think the close, like hunter, you hear about hunters all the time, and they'll tell you they see or hear nothing in the woods. I don't believe that. I think they do. They just aren't open to it, and they make a count in their head what it is. They make an account for it, or they try to justify it, or they ignore it because they're used to hearing different sounds in the forest, so it's nothing to them. But I do think they hear something. They just aren't registering it because they're not open to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were in Ohio, I find it interesting that you were near a cemetery and you heard these huge whoop sounds coming from the forest along with the coyotes. And then you guys did a wood knock and you got a response. What do you think the response meant? Like, why do you think they replied to you guys?
Um, Never thought about that. Why it replied. Uh, Maybe as a warning is the only thing I could think of. It had to know we were there because I can't see real well at night. And when I asked Kenny how far away the coyotes were, he said they were probably 100 yards away from us. So that's pretty close. So he had to. I would say if he was there, which I'm sure he was, he would have known we were there. There's no doubt in my mind he knew we were there. And if he had captured a kill like what I think he did, because that coyote was literally, I never heard anything shriek and scream and uh, I will just say be ripped piece to piece and dying like that in my life. That was a freaky, scary sound, and maybe it was a warning to stay away. That's the only thing I could think of. Now that you asked me about hindsight, that I could think that would be.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And I've heard strange vocalizations with the coyotes. And people have said that they run with the coyotes, but it almost makes me wonder if they're mimicking coyotes and luring them in to eat them, because I've gotten reports where these things will take people's dogs and the dogs are never seen again.
Yeah, I mean, I could get that. I could understand that. Because there was whooping and there were coyotes and then the shriek. So I guess I could see where they're trying to lure one in. Definitely, I don't know about the running with them. I don't. I'm not sure about that, but I could see that happening because, well, like I said, when we were in the forest, they mimic things, and I've heard a lot about them sound like a little girl or something crying out, and um, that kind of seems what maybe we were hearing in the forest that night was the little girl screaming out.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've had the same experience in the Mark Twain National Forest. The property owner was having Bigfoot encounters out there. We went to the area to research. The first time I went out there, the Sasquatch showed up right at dark time at the edge of the wood line, and I was standing there kind of communicating with them. I mean, all they did was like wood knocked and broke limbs and stuff, and they didn't really respond to what I was saying. But the next time I went out there, I think it was a couple weeks after that, they were vocalizing all over the woods and just doing an array of different vocalizations. And when the coyotes went off, the Sasquatch did too, and it sounded like a little girl like falling down a tunnel. Just like, I can't even mimic it, but it sounded like a little girl screaming her head off out there. And there was all kinds of weird sounds. Like, it sounded like this big creature was croaking like a frog, just like brr, brr. And then it got more aggressive, like ruff, ruff, ruff. But there's a cemetery right by the property owner's place, and for some reason they were around the cemetery. So when you described the activity, I was like, man, that sounds like my buddy's place in the Mark Twain National Forest.
I think there's a lot that goes on down here in the Mark Twain. I think there's a lot that goes on. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that an extension of that is that Richland, Montreal area. When we were kids, we were fishing in Montreal on a pay pond back in, I think it's BB or B back in there. And my uncle, he's kind of developmentally slow and he's like 400 pounds. And we hear a growl, which today I would refer to a Bigfoot. I didn't bring it up here because it's a topic thing. I'm not sure for sure, but it sounded like a growl that literally shook your diaphragm. That's how deep it went through you, and it scared that man so bad. That 400-pound man, that before I could turn around, he was packed up in the truck and had the door locked. And I'm trying to get back in after I reel mine in because that's how deep and roaring that was. So I think there's a lot of things going on between, the Twain, but I think it extends out. I've heard a lot of stuff about Dixon too, which haven't been up there yet. But between Mark Twain and the Montreal area, I think it extends out in there too.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've gotten reports from all around the Fort Leonard Wood area, Licking, Missouri, Swedenborg, Richland, Crocker, Brumley, and south of Lake of the Ozarks. So I mean, that's just a huge area right there. So it tells me these things are all over the place, and it doesn't have to be the Mark Twain National Forest. If there's farmland and there's woods nearby, they're probably around. And there doesn't have to be a ton of woods either. If as long as there's enough woods for them to move at nighttime, they could be around.
Yeah, and then I got friends in Bunker Hill who've got pictures of footprints out in the forest area too when they're out there hunting. So yeah, they're all over. I don't know if they migrate or not though. I'm still wondering about that because there does seem to be times of dead time, like different months that are kind of dead time, and then you'll hear like I haven't heard anything since out here about the house since maybe I would say August or September. I haven't heard anything. So I don't know if they migrate or not, but I can tell you in the summertime about every night I could hear a whoop. If I was out here till 2 o'clock, I could hear a whoop.
Yeah. Okay. So whenever you found that track that was like 16 inches, it sounds like you were definitely being watched. And I found it interesting that something was shaking the bush, and all of a sudden it started raining persimmons. And one interesting thing about persimmons, it's actually known as the fruit of the gods. And you mentioned that there was like a paranormal or supernatural feeling behind it because there was nothing there.
There's nothing there. I'm haunted by that still to this day. My friend hates talking about that story because he's haunted by it because it's unexplained. It's there's you can't explain. All you're doing is conjecturing what you think happened, and because you can't explain it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you were driving, you saw this huge figure grab a tree, or it was hiding behind a tree. Could you see anything, like any features on it? What did it look like?
So all I could see, it was pitch black. The figure was. I mean, it was still light outside. It was pitch black figure, and it was just so huge. It was so massive. I mean, you're if I couldn't tell that far away about a conical shape because that was way too far away. But it was just massive. And I drive every day. Every time I drive by that tree to this day, I slow down to look at that tree, hoping to see it again. Actually, but but there's no doubt in my mind now that there was something standing in that tree. Because the very next time on the way back home, you can't. It's harder to see on the way back home, so I had to stop and go look. And when I got out, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not. I wasn't seeing things. There was a figure standing next to that tree, but that tree, I'm guessing, would probably be 20 foot tall. And this thing was every bit of half of that, 9 foot, 10 foot. It had to be just massive, and the thickness of it was insane. But it was, I swear it was watching me. It was looking at me. It just, I got that feeling. It was, and I couldn't see the eyes. I couldn't, that was too far away. I couldn't see that. But the feeling was it was watching me. And I don't know how long I was stopped in the road. I couldn't even tell you how long I was stopped in the road. All I know is I came to staring at this creature when I got honked at.
Yeah, that's terrifying. And then later on, you saw another figure. It got down and it kind of looked like a canine. You said it was almost the size of a horse. Could you see any features on that creature? Can you describe that a little bit?
It was more of a creamy brownish color, I would say, more that size. And the thing that got me on that was how long the legs were on it. But it wasn't a horse. I mean, I know it wasn't a horse. Well, plus I saw it was a human that got down on fours and then jumped across the thing. What I thought about was dog man. That's the first thought that came through my head, that I just see a dog man, because it got down on fours and then leapt, and the length of it. It literally jumped from one side of that highway and it landed 3/4 of the way onto the pavement on the other side, across the cross line, and then jumped off into the wood slash clearing.
Wow. Yeah,
I
that's
remember it
amazing.
being kind of a brownish green, creamy color. It was like a mix of both. It had, like on the top, it was more brown, and then it kind of blended to more cream color as you went down.
What do you think it
It could
was?
be
A dog
gray.
man or a hellhound?
Well, I don't know much about the hellhound, so I'm gonna say dog man because I don't know much about that.
Okay. Definitely do some research on hellhounds, and basically it's like the size of a lion. I've seen one before, and it's like the size of a lion, but like the body of like a pit bull, like huge chest, has like a mane around its neck. Its head is like kind of like a hyena or a wolf, but like the snout is, but the head is like a pit bull almost. It's a weird description, but it almost seems like a
Okay.
mutated dog.
Right. Yeah, this was not that. I can tell you that because it didn't
Okay.
have a mane. It didn't have. It was very long. The legs on the thing were huge,
Okay.
huge.
We'll call it dog man. At any point, was it bipedal?
Well, when I first saw it, I thought it was a man standing next to a vehicle. I thought there was a man standing next to the vehicle there. And then when I got as I got another 10, 15 feet, it just jumped. It just went down to its all fours and then took off bounding across. So I really thought it was a man. I really thought it was a large man standing there at first because it was tall. I'm like, that's probably what caught my attention, is how tall it was. And then when I got down on all fours and jumped across, I'm like, holy crap, what just happened? That was a man standing next to a vehicle, and now it's leaping across the road.
Yeah, we'll call that dog man. That kind of sounds like a dog man creature. And how do you feel after having these encounters and experiences and watching like the Skinwalker Ranch, finding Bigfoot, and listening to these podcasts? How did that make you feel?
It validates what I've always thought. What I think, what I know I saw. I guess I should, because I know what I saw. You start to question yourself sometimes because everybody else thinks you're crazy or making it up or a moron or something, and that's not the case. So it validates things, and then when you see something that's very similar to what you saw, like when you were describing the infant Bigfoot, that's exactly what I saw. So so that to me, it's more of a validation thing. There's a unique fascination with it, and I've watched a couple of podcasts from other people, or it becomes addictive almost, like it now becomes an obsession, and I feel that way. I feel like I'm obsessed with it because I love watching my sports, but I would go watch an episode of you, or an episode of Half Wrench, or an episode of somebody else before I go watch a football game. I become that kind of obsessed with now, just validating. Do I want to see another one? Yes and no at a distance. Do I want other people to know where I saw one? Not necessarily where one could be if I did find one. No, not necessarily, because I don't think it's something that we need to stick in a cage somewhere in a zoo. So I just look at it more as like a validation and an obsession for more information. It's just more information for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And how has this changed your perspective in life, and has it strengthened your faith religiously? Can you describe that a little bit?
Um, I don't know that I'd say it's made me question more about what's really out there, and um, I'm faithful. I've always had faith. Your faith sways a little bit, but I've never lost my faith. I have faith as strong as ever these days. But I don't know if that has anything to do with it. If anything, that would have been one of the things that made me sway a little bit from it, like aliens, for example, or because these creatures obviously have some kind of ability we don't have. It could be like I really do believe they have cloaking ability. I believe we probably walk by them all the time and don't even know it, because I think they got cloaking ability. And you watch Expedition Bigfoot, you kind of get that glimpse of that too, because the people are looking right at them and they don't see it, but a camera picks it up, and people watching TV will turn it in saying, "Hey, you missed this." But it's right in front of them. They don't see it. So it's got abilities we don't have. And I also think the government does know. I absolutely think the government knows, and it's that technology that they're trying to protect. That's kind of, I guess, religiously, I don't know that it impacts me any.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were walking with your daughter and you guys heard something following you, why do you think it threw the boulder at you?
I have no idea why. I have no idea why. It was totally just a whole strange thing, because she didn't have any idea what any of that stuff was. She didn't know what a Bigfoot was or anything. I just told her to pay attention because something was following me, and it was definitely bipedal. And you couldn't see anything in the woods. If a man would have had to get close enough to throw that I could have seen him. A man would have had a hard time throwing that boulder, because that boulder probably had to weigh at least 50 pounds, because it was a pretty good sized boulder to throw it, drop in the middle of the road, or middle of the trail, then going down the hill. Again, it could have been a warning. Maybe it could have been a warning that we're getting close to a nest, we're getting close to an infant. And that's another thing that I think when they do things like that, they're protecting something. I don't think they're aggressive, that wanting to harm us humans. They're protecting something when they act out.
Yeah, it does seem to be. And where did that happen at?
That was in Costa Rica, up in on one of the Cloud Mountains up there.
Oh, wow, that's
We went there for
interesting.
a family vacation. We went there.
Yeah, and the guy knew what a yowie was, but he didn't know what Bigfoot was.
Yeah, well, he had broken English anyway, so
Hmm.
it was kind of hard talking to him. So I had to describe it. And when I described it to him, he instantly used the word Yowie, which I knew from watching all the programs. But he said all the locals see him all the time. He doesn't believe in it. That's what he said. But he said, "Oh, the locals see that all the time. They say they're up there."
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if they're in Costa Rica.
Yeah, well, according to him, that guy, the locals think they are.
Okay, very good. And where do you think you're going to go now with all this information? Are you going to go camping in the woods, to go hiking, to look for them? What's your take on it all?
I don't know, because I think you got a lot of guts when you do that at night in those places, and I'm not sure I have that kind of courage yet. I don't know. At night camping in some area where there's something there, that's kind of scary to me. Yes, I would like to try it. I have to get up more courage to do it. I love going hiking. We've got like where we hear the whoops, we have a electrical line that goes up and through the forest there. So me and her want to go hiking up there one day. Now I don't know if I want to do that at night. I want to do that during the day because I feel more comfortable, especially when I have my wife with me going up in there. We've actually kind of snuck into the back part of the base back in here one time and hiked a little bit. We didn't see anything back in there, but this isn't on the base. This is off the base, and so I'm going to continue doing that. I'm going to continue hiking, keep looking. I'm going to Ohio again in March. I'm going to look some more up there again. But
Yeah.
I don't know about my courage anymore doing it at night. We go all the time at night in Ohio.
Hmm.
But as I watch things, listen to your podcast, the Half Wrench crew, listen to them guys, I become a little more intimidated about, do I really want to go do this at night anymore? I just want to see the evidence and then tabulate all the evidence together. I'm not right. Yes, I want to. Right now, I don't have the courage to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it terrifies me being out there at nighttime. I don't think it did so much in the beginning, but the more I've seen, the more I've learned. I don't know, if anything, I'm not going to say dumb, but just kind of looking for that shock value, I guess, to get the gears turning and to learn more, of course, and to research and figure out more about this topic. But at the same time, yeah, I'm terrified when I'm out there. Sometimes it's not so bad, but then others it is. It just depends. Like sometimes you just have this strange feeling like something don't feel right. And then other times like you feel all right and everything's normal. I don't know.
Yeah. And when you get that feeling, I always say trust that sixth sense. I always trust that because there is something telling you something's not right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got a new piece of equipment. Well, not a piece of equipment. I got a new pup. It's an Australian Shepherd. I actually named him Yowie. So I feel like that's going to be a better tool out in the woods than like a camera or thermal or a parabolic dish because they can really pick up on the activity. And it's just nice to be out there with someone else or a dog so you don't feel so alone. And I don't know. I feel like I got a new friend to go hiking with. So I think that's
And
pretty cool.
if a dog puts its tail between its legs, that's a warning sign right there. And then kind of starts to cower back. They're not going to cower too much from a bear. They're not going to cower too much from a mountain lion. But if there's something they have no idea what they're dealing with, they will cower back.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's just a little bitty puppy. He was born in November, and I've been kind of training him out here to stay with me and to be observant. And you can tell just sometimes his head just pokes up and he's looking into the woods like something's got his attention. I don't know what it is. Like, I know when there's a squirrel, I can hear it and he can hear it, but like sometimes he's just looking in certain areas like there's something there.
Yeah, yeah.
Who knows? They got a very strong nose, so it's hard to say what's getting his attention.
We've got some dogs. We haven't really taken them hiking with us yet, but that was a comment I made about 2 weeks ago. Is when we got to take one of them or two of them with us next time because it's a better warning signal for you. It's a better. Well, if they catch a track or smell something, we don't know that. They would smell that before we would smell it, so they can maybe lead us a little bit more to a direction too at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Technology has seemed to fail me, and I mean, I got my cameras in case I see one and it's right out in the open, but I'm going more towards a dog because they have senses that are beyond our knowing. Same with the Sasquatch, and I feel like that would be the best tool out in the woods.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, like when I crossed the border in Texas, like going into Mexico, that's what they use is dogs to find drugs and firearms and things like that. They're not using like technology; they're relying on a dog.
Yep.
Okay.
Because you can evade technology with all kinds of things. You can evade it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you can't trick an animal. I mean, maybe
Right.
sometimes, but so when you guys went by Fort Leonard Wood, you didn't hear anything?
When we went back in there, we went there in the middle of the day though, back in there, and
Mm-hmm.
no, we didn't hear anything. We didn't, not a thing. Not didn't see a track, didn't see a structure, didn't see anything on their property. We didn't. Now, like I said, I haven't been back behind us yet, but I do hear whoops behind us. The base is to my left. Directly behind me is the forest,
Yeah.
and they don't. Yeah, so it's not all. It's not technically on there.
It almost makes me wonder if they got like a cryptid kill squad in the military, and if they do, that would be an ideal place because there's a lot of reports out there, and the Army base is in that area. And if they wanted to train soldiers to hunt these things down, I feel like that would be like an optimal area.
Yes, yeah.
But
Like I said, though, I think they're very aware of them. I think they know they exist.
yeah, it's like if you can sneak up on a Sasquatch, you pass the test. It is possible, though. I've snuck up on two of them before, and I mean, it's hard to say if they were just watching me and they let me see them, but I was sneaking around and I did see them. But again, it's like those moments where it's like a 5 to 8 second encounter, so it's hard.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard to react in that situation. And I froze too. Like it almost seems like time stands still and you don't know what to do. Like even if you did have a camera or a firearm, like you wouldn't even think of grabbing it because your mind's so shocked by what it's observing.
Yeah, and then when I saw the big black figure there by Richland, it wasn't fear. It was like something just captured my attention and wouldn't let go of it until the halt came.
Yeah. That is very interesting. Do you live in that area now, or was that?
Yeah, I live.
Okay.
Well, I live, like I said, right next to Fort Leonard Wood. I live right next to the military cemetery.
Oh, wow. So you can go looking for these things all the time or just hiking. There's a lot of forest out there, and that's a prime area for Bigfoot. But again, there's so much forest out there. It's hard to say where they will be, but I'm sure if you spend time out there, you'll hear something.
Yeah, my neighbor, he backs up to the forest. You have to cross the street to get down to it from here. But he says he hears stuff back there he can't explain all the time.
Oh yeah, I have no doubt about that. Okay. Well, if you ever want to meet up and tell your encounters on video, I'd totally be up for that, but I understand if you want to keep things private and makes sense to me. So that's all right too.
The only thing is I have stage fright. That'd be my only concern.
Right. Well, if you ever break past that barrier and you want to meet up and share these experiences one day and maybe go out for a hike, I'd certainly be up for it.
Okay. I've heard there's caves back in here too, so.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's actually a cave right off of I don't know if it's like M Highway or J Highway, right off the Big Piney River, and it's up on a bluff, but they claim that they found giants in that cave. I think it was in the 1940s. I don't remember exactly, but it looks like a pretty big cave.
Well, the Gasconade where you cross there on 7, if you looked up to the left, there's a cave way up there in the rocks too. I don't know how anybody got to it, but there's a cave way up there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder like if there's caves underneath the river. I'm sure there are, like that we can't see.
Yeah.
I've seen some videos on YouTube where people are looking for like Civil War guns and caches, and like they have scuba gear and they like dive into the river, and like on the banks there's like caves and they swim into them, so it makes you wonder.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So do you think this is a flesh and blood creature or supernatural? What's your take on that?
Because I'm confused by it these days. I'm going to lean to it's flesh and blood.
Mm-hmm.
But there's more to it. There's more to it. Like you said, so you said the word earlier, dimensional. I almost think it's dimensional.
Yeah,
I think
me
it
too.
comes through portals.
Yeah, absolutely. Like they're a flesh and blood creature. You can find hairs, you can find tracks, you can get video of them. They're physically here, but they're also dimensional or supernatural. I think there's two sides to the coin.
And a lot of the hair doesn't match up to anything, so they discount it, which would tell you that it could be possibly dimensional, and that's why we can't recognize the hair.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I found interesting about the DNA studies that have been done regarding the hairs is they say it's human mother and father unknown. And like in the Bible, when it talks about the giants, it talks about how the fallen angels bred with human women, and they had a race of giants that had supernatural abilities. So I don't know. I kind of feel like that lines up with what the Bible says.
Right. I've always equated to maybe they were the giants.
Yeah, or creatures that were created in that time because God had to save like Noah's family or preserve his family, but also two of every living creature. For some reason, they had to like restart animals as well, or
Right.
restore them, I guess is the word. Okay. Well, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, and I really do appreciate you for contacting me and sharing these experiences with me. And I know you have to run. I know you got a meeting to attend to. So, yeah, I really appreciate your time. And it was an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. And I love hearing about Bigfoot encounters from Missouri. And it just validates what I've seen and experienced as well. So it's a really good feeling. And I really do appreciate everything you did today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your channel. So keep it going.
All right, Brad. You take care, and if you ever encounter anything else or if you'd like to meet up in the future, reach out to me, okay?
Sure. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, and you have an excellent day.
You too.
All right. Bye. All right, Bradley, thank you again for sharing your Bigfoot encounters and experiences with me here on the channel. And it was terrifying to hear that encounter with the Sasquatch that ran into the barn and was looking out the window. I'm sure when that creature ducked down, that really freaked you guys out. I interviewed a farmer here in Missouri, and the video was called The Killing Fields. It's from the Current River Conservation Area, and he claimed that possibly a juvenile Sasquatch was in his barn because he heard a whoop come from the barn, and it makes me wonder if these creatures sometimes seek shelter to get out of the elements, and I think it's very possible. The fact that the Sasquatch was on farmland in a cornfield with an area that does not have that much forest is a mystery. It makes me wonder what these things truly are, and if it is interdimensional or if they're on all fours crawling through the corn. And it makes you wonder that these things could possibly just be anywhere at any time. A lot of times we hear people say that they can't be in Kansas, but if they're moving on all fours, if they're spider crawling, I think it is possible. And also if there are portals and creatures that come from these portals that we just don't understand, I think that's a possibility as well. I'm very open-minded to any theory out there regarding these creatures, but I do like to look at this from a physical point of view because we are physically seeing these creatures here on planet Earth. I appreciate all the people who listen to the podcast, and for those who support the channel, it really means a lot. If you guys can, please donate to the PayPal to help the research, or donate through the thanks, or you can also purchase some merchandise to help spread awareness of these creatures and to promote the channel. Thank you, everyone, and be safe out in the wilderness.